Since biology is the study of living things, it's very important in a biology class to go over those characteristics of living things. You know, what criteria have to be met for something to be considered living? So let's start out with a diagram. This is called a phylogenetic tree that represents all living things on our planet. Now, one thing scientists like to do is group things into categories based on similarities. And so this area over here in blue, this represents one group of organisms, and they belong to what's called the domain bacteria. They are unicellular organisms, and the type of cell they are is called a prokaryote, which means they don't have a nucleus in their cells. Now over here in the green, we have another group of prokaryotes, and these prokaryotes belong to the domain archaea. They have some definite characteristics that put them in their own category separate from the bacteria. For example, their cell wall is a little different. Some of them live in very extreme environments, so they get their own special category. But collectively, the bacteria and the archaea are both prokaryotic cells. Now over here in red, this is the group to which we belong. This is the domain eukarya. Now eukarya, it has its own group, because the cells that make up these organisms are eukaryotic cells, which means they have a nucleus. And this is the group that's got those organisms we're super familiar with: animals, plants, protists, and fungi. Now right here, I want you to notice that there's this central kind of organism here. This goes to the theme that all life on our planet evolved from one type of organism. And from that one organism, we have this huge amount of diversity on our planet. All right, so these are the living things. What do you have to be part of this entire graphic? Well, first of all, cells. All organisms on our planet are either unicellular, which means one, or multicellular, which means many. Now, those multicellular organisms have a definite organization to their body. And if you start at the cellular level, as the organism starts to grow and develop, and those cells start to become specialized and different, they're going to group together into tissues, which then become organs, which then become systems, and then you've got your big organism. Now, another thing that all living things do is reproduce, and there are two main types of reproduction on our planet: sexual and asexual. Sexual reproduction, the magic number is 2. It's going to require 2 specialized cells called gametes, and I put a picture of sperm and egg here to illustrate those 2 very special cells involved in sexual reproduction. Now, the other type is asexual, and you put that A in front of the word sexual, it means without. And an asexual organism is just making a copy of itself. They make little identical clones. Now, this has a plus in that it's kind of speedy, but downside is doesn't give you a lot of variety, whereas sexual reproduction produces a lot of variety in our planet. Now, all living things have a genetic code, and on our planet, that genetic code is DNA. Stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And doesn't matter if you are a jellyfish in the sea or a giraffe on the savannas of Africa, your cells, every single one of them, has DNA in them. Now, all living things are going to grow and develop, and that growing and developing can result in an increase in size of the organism. It can help repair any cells that were lost. And all living things will have this definitive lifespan and life stages as they progress through their life. Now, living things have to obtain energy, and they have to use energy. And these chemical reactions involved in this process are called metabolism. Now, metabolism can be divided into 2 separate categories. The first one being catabolism, which is chemical reactions that break down something, and anabolism is the building up, so combining of molecules. And this picture of the seal and the fish is a great example of both catabolism and anabolism, because this seal is going to, once that has ingested the fish, is going to start breaking down those molecules through a series of reactions through the digestive system. And then those molecules are going to be reassembled in a different manner so that it can form the seal's hair or replace eye cells or skin cells. Now, all living things are going to respond to their environment. And you know this, if you've ever touched something exceptionally hot, you let go very quickly. Plants can do it too. They can respond to the movement of light. A sensitive mimosa, which is the one you see here, will respond to touch. It'll fold its little leaves together. The stimulus response reaction happens in all organisms on our planet. All living things do this. Now, all living things are going to maintain an internal balance, and the science word for this is homeostasis. Now, this internal balance is crucial for survival. This picture you see here is of these microscopic cells on the bottom of a leaf called stomata. And what the stomata do are open and close. And when they're open, they lose water. And that's great because that helps to draw water up from the roots and move up into the leaves where it's necessary for photosynthesis. But the plant doesn't necessarily want to lose a lot of water all at once, so those stomata will be closed during the hottest part of the day and opened in the more temperate time of the day. And this is also the place where oxygen and CO2 can get in. Now, this gross picture shows homeostasis in a guy who's working out. And we've all done this. You sweat when you get too hot. And the idea behind that is your body recognizes that your internal core temperature is getting too high, which can be deadly. So it will release water through the pores onto the skin, which will then evaporate and take heat with it and cool the body off. Now, all organisms on our planet have evolved. And you have to think of evolution happening to a large group, not just an individual. So let's say here this shows the evolutionary path of the horse. And this happened to the entire species, not one single horse on its own. And then the big ideas in biology is our big focus for the year. And one of the big ideas is, all these characteristics of life apply. And so what we'll do is kind of delve into each of those things more in detail and actually how they happen. And that will encompass our entire year. Another big idea in biology is unity and diversity. All living things on our planet are unified in that we all have the same DNA molecules, and we use the same amino acids to make proteins. Now, the way in which the molecules of our DNA are organized and the way in which we make our proteins is a little bit different, which will lead to the diversity. Now, over here, we have this wonderful graphic that, if you look on the very right-hand side, shows the domain eukarya, which you heard me mention in the first slide. So this includes all organisms that have a eukaryotic cell. And you notice as we start to move towards the species category that organisms are dropping out. And that's because of that diversity. Some organisms go one way on the tree of life and some go another because they might not have a characteristic that allows them to stay within that particular group. Then third big idea in biology is the interdependence in nature and that everything is connected. And we'll really talk about this when we go to talk about ecology. And then the last thing, which is a big theme for biology, is that science is a way of knowing. Now, in science, we try to find knowledge based on logic, evidence, and reasoning. And we know that is the scientific method. Now, science is not the only way to gain knowledge, but when we're referring to science being a way of knowing, it's a systematic, logical, evidence-based approach.